What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Trust Your Board podcast. My name is Stephen Wright, joined by Mr. William Monroe. How you doing, Will?
Nervous, Steve. I have one playoff game that's going to come down here to Monday Night Football.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oof. Wow. What's the situation?
Scenario is I am down by 15.4 points, and he's done, and I have Mr. Christian Watson. So the boomer bust king himself, exactly. So it's been like half of the time that he has done it here in a half-point scoring. Projected, I think, for 11, so obviously, just short. But yeah, I mean, he has hit that mark 4 weeks in a row, but then prior to that has not hit that mark. So it should be interesting to see how this happens.
Well, now that you need him, I'm sure the streak will be broken, and he'll end up with like 3 points.
Yep. Or he'll have a good 11 points and just below.
Yep. That's how it works.
We will see. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I'm moving on in a couple of leagues. So I've got should be a very interesting Christmas weekend. I'll have one team in the championship and either 4 or 5 teams in the semifinals.
Very nice, yeah.
Including our Dynasty League, Steve, where we look to have just gotten through here in the first round.
Yes, we did. Like a 6-point league, 7-point win, something to that effect. Always good when your defense gets you a solid 2 points and you pull out a victory.
Yes.
So we'll see next week. We go up against the best team in the league. I think they
one loss, right?
One loss, I believe. So that's not ideal. But I do look at his team and think it's beatable. So
yeah, I think definitely have a chance. It should be a good game, and the other side of the bracket's 2 pretty good teams too. So it'll be interesting to see how it finishes.
Yeah. It might be bittersweet for you if Jalen Hurts doesn't play, because Jalen Hurts is on that team.
Yes, and
if we could avoid that,
I at this point kind of hope he doesn't play, because the Eagles are in a pretty good spot where with 3 games to play, their magic number is 1, so they need to win 1 of the 3 or have Dallas lose 1 of the 3, and I guess technically Minnesota lose 1 of their 3. So it would be nice, and I think they should be able to win at least 1 game with backup quarterback Gardner Minshew, who we'll talk about a little later, and then be able to let Mr. Jalen Hurts rest here for about a month. Actually, I'll have 5 weeks between now and the first playoff game if they clinch that bye week.
Woof, yeah, there you go. So we'll see. Won a few injuries. So I guess you're really not looking to the waiver wire to cover too many injuries. Probably just Hurts and JT.
Yeah.
The others, you got McCoy, Tannehill, Denzel Mims. Yeah, whatever. Like nobody's really starting.
Nothing too major there.
No.
Yeah. One of the first weeks, I think we've got a few interesting options at running back. We haven't seen really that in a while, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. Tyler Algier popped off.
Yeah, big game for Algier.
Yeah, really good game. Now he does get Baltimore this week, and that's a tough running defense. But beggars can't be choosers at the running back position.
New Orleans was a pretty tough running defense as well. They're a good defense overall and a pretty good rushing defense. So good to see him 17 for 139 on the ground. So obviously splitting some carries there with Patterson. Only 1 catch, but he scored a touchdown, got a 2-point conversion. So overall, pretty happy with him, and I think he's definitely someone that can be added, and I think it'll be tough, but he's definitely in flex consideration.
Yeah, agreed. Next one on our list is probably my least favorite, Marlon Mack. I am not going to rely on Marlon Mack in my playoff run. I don't care what he's done for how many weeks. It ain't happening for me, but do you have interest in Mr. Mack?
No, I mean, maybe in a very deep league. Maybe you're looking at your 14, 16-team leagues, and at that point, he's probably rostered, just with the amount of people and the scarcity of running back. But he's pretty efficient on just 9 touches, scoring 14 points in a half-point scoring league. Putting up, 55 yards roughly, and got in the end zone. But it's just the touches aren't going to be there. You're not going to have as juicy of a matchup to get your second running back working there against a Rams team that has actually been pretty good against the run, despite all of the holes that they have this year. They've been pretty good against the run. So I think, that's more like a desperation play if you really, really, really need a running back.
Yeah, agreed. Another one I'm not sure we can trust. but he's definitely the clear handcuff would be Warren out there in Pittsburgh. Do you see him as anything more than a handcuff, or did I miss something?
No, I think it's
This is
probably
about
just
it, right?
handcuff. I mean, he
Yeah.
was pretty efficient in his work though, so like he clearly is, the guy if we see any injuries come up, but probably not going to be startable right now, as I don't think there's really much going on with Najee. He seems to be okay, but 11 carries, 38 yards, had to catch and got in the end zone. So once again, if you have space and you want to get a guy that has really big upside, I think it's Warren. I think he's clearly the guy if something happens to Najee.
Yeah, only rostered in 13% of leagues. He's definitely someone where you just cut that bench fodder, that upside guy, like whoever it may be, that's just not going to cut your roster, and pick up Warren just in case, because you never
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, you sit him there, and he's probably more of a possible play next week. But if you're in the championship game and if Najee seems to be all good coming out of the week, then he's an easy cut to kind of load up on players that you could use possibly for that final game.
Yeah, exactly. Like Kadarius Toney. If you're still holding on to Kadarius Toney, like just cut him, move along, and grab Warren.
There's the
just on
upside
the off
is
chance.
immense there, exactly. With
exactly, yeah. If Najee goes down, wonderful. Like if Juju goes down, you don't know that it's Toney. Like
yeah,
and you're not going to trust him in the championship game. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. James Cook, 53% rostered, so he's getting up there, but continues to get a lot of pass catching work, making him quite valuable, right?
Yeah, I got in the end zone, so that really helped him. Definitely, probably one of the lower marks we've seen for him from just a touch standpoint. He only had 7 touches, 3 targets, 5 carries, caught 2 of them, only 39 yards, so not great, but it was a tough matchup. I think against Chicago is a much better matchup there. You could see him worked in a lot more in the second half. Tough place to play too. We saw with the Eagles and Bears game, it was very tough to throw there. So there's a lot of rushing, and I think you could see that again with Buffalo. A team that I think they should be able to handle Chicago, even though Chicago hung around with the Eagles. So I guess it's not guaranteed that you're going to take that team out, but I think it's a good matchup
really
and solid
game.
play. Yeah.
So we'll see what that means, but yeah, it could be.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll see. It's a Saturday. It's a Saturday. So we've got a lot of time between now and then. Weather can change, but yeah, keep an eye on the forecast. This is the time of year when snow comes down and could change. Some game plans for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Chuba Hubbard, another one on our list. Did you end up starting him in your?
I did. Yeah, so I started Chuba and Cook there, and Curtis Samuel did solid, but not enough there. So it worked out. That's the team here that I need Mr. Watson to get some points for me. But out of those 4 teams, the 4 players that I was debating for the flex, Cook and Chuba were the 2 high scorers of the 3 or the 4, and they were the ones that I ended up plugging in. So it worked out. Got me as close as I could hope for with Christian Watson left.
Yeah, so Chuba wasn't great, not as we've seen in the past, but he didn't kill you either. Had like a 40-yard catch. I think that helped, but only ended up with 4 carries. I believe Dante Foreman struggled too. So just the running game as a whole struggled.
Yeah, and I think that just comes back to Pittsburgh again, just being just a good defense. I mean, statistically this year they're not right. They're not. They're a better matchup, but I think they had some injuries. Watt was out for a while, and I think that really affected the stats there. They're a better team than their statistics, their rankings, let's say, are, and definitely are a tough matchup.
Yeah, agreed. So let's look at the indie replacements for Jonathan Taylor. I believe Zach Moss got most of the work. Then Deion Jackson right behind him. So I'm leaning Moss. Is that your lean as well, or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they both had decent work. 13 carries and 1 catch for Deion Jackson, I believe it was, and Zach Moss, I think, a little bit more than that. He came away with 24 carries, just the 1 target. So he's definitely more on the ground versus maybe he can get some more targets with Jackson. I don't know that I really want to trust either, but it is a nice matchup against the Chargers from a running standpoint. So it's interesting. I think maybe just from a mentality standpoint, it's a Monday night game. I think people will be pulling their hair out knowing that they need X amount of points from one of these two guys if you're starting them in your lineup.
Yeah, that's definitely a like a ballsy play in the playoffs, man. Like you said on Monday night, if you're Monday night and you're down by whatever 10 points, 12 points, and you're staring down Zach Moss and that Indy offense, man, oof. It's going to be a tough position to be in.
Yeah,
But
and I
like you
think
said, the matchup's there.
depending how it goes, I mean, game script could be more in Deion Jackson's side if they are in fact losing to a good Chargers team. But it's the NFL, and anything can happen any given Sunday. So never guaranteed that they're going to be there. You probably would have thought the same thing against Minnesota, and obviously the game script wasn't there for the passing game of Indy because they were able to just run it down the throat and try to hold a lead, which unfortunately they were unsuccessful in doing.
Yeah, very true. Very true. What a game. And then we got Clear Herbert on here. He's still on IR, right?
Yes, I think he is expected to return to practice this week and could play against the Bills, in which we talked about earlier with James Cook could be a rushing attack. So I think he's someone that, if he's out there, if the league doesn't have IR spots and someone had to cut him, he's definitely worth a stash, in some same vein as Warren. He's someone that probably could be played, that, even if there's no injury ahead of him, because he had split pretty evenly with David Montgomery.
Yeah, it's just been a while, so there's going to be definitely some worry there. But maybe they ease him into the role when you start him and you get burned, or you just don't know. But we've seen it before, so that alone puts him above a Zach Moss and a Deion Jackson. So yeah, just if you want to roll the dice or not on the injury. But hey, that takes care of the running backs. Wide receivers, we start with Mr. Zay Jones, 55% rostered. Again, he's one of our guys that just ends up on the sheet every week. Do you have anything more to add about Zay Jones that we haven't really discussed?
Yeah, I mean, he's, boom or bust-ish, but he's been more boom than bust recently. I mean, 3 touchdowns is obviously a lot. So you take that off, still 14 points, I think, roughly, 110, 109 yards, 6 catches. So still a solid line. You can't expect 3 touchdowns every week, but I think he's still someone that is definitely in plus consideration. And if you're light at receiver, probably a wide receiver 3.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely a solid option there. Dotson on the list, only rostered in 17% of leagues. He does have San Francisco, which really not ideal.
Yeah, I mean,
are you liking him or?
Yeah, I mean, they actually are 11th in matchup here for receiver, and we talked about it with Pittsburgh earlier. Sometimes that can be deceiving, but I don't think they're like a terrifying matchup just from a fantasy standpoint for your wide receivers. Obviously, very tough defense if your favorite team is going against them, or quarterback, let's say. But I think probably a lot of game script gets receivers more targets, maybe some more trash yardage against them because they're a good team overall. But yeah, I mean, back-to-back good weeks coming, off injury. Before the bye, 5 for 54 and a touchdown on 9 targets. And this last week, 4 for 105 and a touchdown on 6 targets. So clearly is involved in the game plan. I think, probably cutting into Curtis Samuel and some of the secondary receivers usage. But I think he's definitely someone that needs to be rostered at this point.
Yeah, I agree. He's a good young up-and-coming player. I'd be curious where his drop position is next year.
Yeah, it should be interesting with him and Terry, and we'll see if there's a new quarterback there if they stick with Heineke.
Yeah, you never know. KJ Osborne, we've seen him pop off from time to time. Somebody that I think people are waiting for Adam Thielen to go, and then maybe he steps in the role. But he's had 2 good weeks now. Obviously, this last week,
game
being a huge one
him out there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure you can expect that every week, but if he had a good game next week against the Giants, it wouldn't really surprise me. Just a risky thing to do in the playoffs, I think.
Agreed. I think maybe the one thing that's working in his favor is, despite the game script being perfect for the passing game, Adam Thielen only had 4 targets, 3 catches. So you would think that all of the receivers, that would kind of be, rising tide raises all boats, but it was not the case, surprisingly, for Adam Thielen. You know what you got with Justin Jefferson. He's clearly the one. But I feel like we may be seeing KJ Osborne overtake Thielen. And obviously in the offseason, maybe there's some moves made that solidify that for Osborne. But right now, I think could be a sneaky play. The Giants are actually pretty decent against the wide receiver position. But I think he's definitely, another flex consideration here. Like I probably would play Dotson Jones over him. But I think I'd probably play him over most of the rest of the guys we talk about here.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Noah Brown, next on our list. Only 2% rostered. I'm assuming you want KJ over him, right?
Yeah, and I put him on here because he had a big game. He used double digits and half-point scoring last week as well. He's had some big plays, 9 targets, 6 catches, 49 yards. Got in the end zone twice. That really helped him out. And going against a pretty good Eagles secondary, I think it's going to be more of Lamb, the running game, tight end. Maybe he has a big play, here and there, but I think it's probably someone that I would leave myself on the waivers.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a flyer. And if Hurts is out, that hurts even more because you're kind of banking on a high scoring game, and maybe that ups his odds of doing something. And if Hurts isn't there, Minshew's a pretty capable guy, but not the same. Russell Gage popping up. He is not somebody that we have talked about in a while. I think since draft season, or you had one good week this week or this year at some point, but had a big one this week. 2 touchdowns, somewhere around 60 yards, I think. They got Arizona. I don't think that's a bad thing, but Tampa Bay as a whole just not looking right. But are you interested in Mr. Gage? Can you trust Mr. Gage?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, he had a ton of targets this week, but really hasn't had many, say, in recent weeks. So probably not. I think this was really an interesting game script because they were up early and then went down, so they had to throw the ball a lot. But I think, all 3 of the receivers there did well. I don't think that's going to happen too often. Arizona probably going to be a better game script for the run game, and once he gets some work early, maybe they don't use him as much with what could be a third-string quarterback starting for Arizona. So not much interest there. What about you?
No, I don't trust him. I'm assuming it's a one-off. I mean, he got a touchdown the prior week as well, but I think he had like 10 yards or something. So it doesn't really matter. So no, not interested there. In fact, I'd be more interested in our next guy here, Rashid Shaheed out of New Orleans. 4 targets each of the past 2 weeks, 3 the week prior, 95 yards and a touchdown this week. He's out there a fair bit too. So I think I would go with him over Russell Gage. It still feels like a bit more a roll of the dice, but your waiver wires in championship week. What do you expect? What do you think of him?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the matchup against Cleveland, middle of the pack. Obviously, good week here, but got in the end zone, 95 yards, only 3 catches, 4 targets. So I think you're looking for a big play out of him, or you're probably not very happy. It seems like you're looking at Juwan Johnson probably is ahead of him in the pecking order. I think the running game, you need to get Kamara some targets, obviously Olave. So, there's definitely a chance there, right? But I think it's more big plays that you need out of him. So he's someone I probably also would leave on the waivers. Probably play him over Noah Brown and Russell Gage, but pretty firmly behind those first 3 that we talked about.
Yep, that's very fair. Matt Collins continues to pop up on the waivers every once in a while because he's kind of boom bust. 29% rostered, had himself a good week, got in the end zone there. Where does Matt Collins fall on your list of
Yeah, it's interesting. He's still at 8 targets, despite the return of both Waller and Renfro. It looks like Renfro, may just kind of be odd man out at this point. We'll see the offseason if anything changes there for him and for the team. But yeah, I mean, decent matchup from just kind of receiver standpoint against Pittsburgh. We talked about that team, being better than they are. So maybe not the easiest going into Pittsburgh for Las Vegas. But I think he's pretty squarely above the three we just talked about, but behind those top three. Yeah, he's probably right in there with Osborne for me. Maybe a safer play than KJ, but not as high upside as KJ.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's very fair. And then Chris Moore has popped up. I think we talked about him last week too. 19% rostered. The benefactor of people being out. If they continue to be out, yeah, I guess you can sort of trust him, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's getting the targets. 11 targets 2 weeks ago, 9 targets this week. Because as long as people are out, you can trust him. And it's got a good matchup. Tennessee is the best matchup for wide receivers. So
just feels bad.
Not going to be pretty. Yeah, it's going to feel
Yeah.
nasty. But I think, he's right behind that Osborne and Hollins tier. And most of those guys are gone. He's someone that you can play kind of reluctantly, but you know that he's got a decent target floor at least, and you hope that amounts to some points.
Yeah, very fair. So moving on to the tight end positions here, Will. Juwan Johnson, the return, very good.
Yeah, another big week for him.
Yeah, real nice week. Okonow, I forget how you pronounce his name. Okonkwo. So out there, we talked about him last week. Noah Fant, we've talked about a few times. Trey McBride out there, 4% rostered. Who you liking? Who do you not liking out of this grouping here?
Yeah, I think it's probably that order. I think Juwan Johnson, when healthy, is clearly a part of the game plan. So I probably would play him. Okonkwo and Fant pretty close. I probably trust Fant a little more, but Okonkwo has been part of the game plan. But with Houston, you just usually don't really need to throw the ball because they're so bad against the run and could just be a monster Derrick Henry game. So good luck to anybody that has to play him here in the finals or semifinals, depending on where your playoffs would lie. Because this week coming up against Tennessee against Houston is going to be rough. You're probably banking on a couple targets and a touchdown there for Okonkwo. And McBride, I think, is more of a speculative ad. Maybe more than anything, a little bit of confidence for anybody who rosters him in a dynasty league because he didn't really see much all year, but got involved. 4 catches, 55 yards on 5 targets. So it's good to see him at least getting involved here a little bit at the end of the year.
Yeah, very true. I'm in line with all of that, and I think that is solid. So we'll turn over to the streaming portion of the show. Well, we got a lot of quarterbacks to choose from, quite a few. So we have Minshew, assuming he's going to play at Dallas.
1% rostered, and I'm sure that'll change here with the news that it sounds like Hurts is probably not going to play this week. Tough matchup against Dallas, but you got the weapons, you got a great offensive line. I think everything is lined up for Minshew to be in good shape here. So I think he's definitely a play, and I think he's probably going to be the most widely available, that you want to play out of the group here.
Okay, so then let's toss Minshew out. Who is the best of the rest? We have Purdy versus Washington, Daniel Jones at Minnesota, one of the Jets quarterbacks, whoever starts, versus Jacksonville, Davis Mills at Tennessee, whatever Pittsburgh quarterback starts, versus Vegas, and Darnold versus Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Mike White is in, he's proved to be good, so I like that matchup there. He's probably the top guy. Purdy and Jones seem pretty safe. They both have been solid. Out of the rest of the bunch, I'd probably look at maybe Davis Mills. Tennessee has been really bad against the pass, so maybe you can have a decent passing game there. But you're probably not thrilled about him or the rest of the bunch here. I think it's if you can't get Minshew, I think it's you roll the dice that Mike White's the guy, and otherwise you're looking at hopefully Purdy or Jones. And Jones is rostered in 59% of leagues, so he's someone that's probably not out there. You're probably looking at Mike White or Purdy.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I'd rather go Mike White. But yeah, it's between those two. Daniel Jones, he's highly rostered. He'd probably be solid, but it's hard to trust the other ones. So yeah, I'm with you. I'll go with Mike White if he's playing. If he's not, I'll go Purdy.
All right. And that brings us over to the defenses here. Some interesting options, Steve. I've got a couple listed here, all within the usual range of like kind of 30 to 50% here. We've got the Titans against Houston. We've got the Jets against Jacksonville. The Browns against the Saints. The Rams against Denver. The Steelers against Las Vegas. The Saints, the only road team of the bunch here, against Cleveland.
Yeah, no one is really jumping out at me as like I'm in love with them. I'd like the Saints against Cleveland. And I think I'd like the Rams against Denver, just because Denver is a mess. So I'll go with those two. I'd probably lean on the Rams between the two. Other matchups are solid, good enough. But I think I lean those two. What about you?
Yeah, I think they have the best matchups probably. You'd think probably the Rams, against that Denver team is rough. Titans against Houston is interesting. Obviously, Houston's, been a little more formidable recently against Dallas and Kansas City, two playoff teams. But I think the way the game plan works, you're going to have a lot of rushing, and maybe that just kind of takes some plays off the board for Houston. Not going to be able to run as many plays. I think that helps the Tennessee defense. I do like them. The Steelers are interesting just because they've been playing a lot better. They're at home. Raiders coming off of a really crazy win, but a good offense, but still something that I think is interesting. And then, I think the Saints and Browns both could be interesting at home. We'll see what the weather looks like, though, in Cleveland. That's an outdoor game.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. Weather makes it tough this time of year, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Hey, well, that's going to wrap up the waiver show. One more waiver show left next week, and then we're done with dealing with waivers for a while.
Yeah, crazy to think.
Yeah. Time flies, man. Time flies. But tune in on Thursday for our Start Sit episode. Until then, folks, trust your board.